I got a backwards hat, a backwards nap. You can take it upside so you don't get slapped. What's you meaning by that? Let me tell ya. You get your feet inside of a smell ya zone. That's the nose, and you don't want them to be mad about that. They get that mad about that when you do that, 'cause they're sitting on the other side of the bed, just like they don't do, going down to broke you. It's the university that I told you not to attend, 'cause they give you too much loaning. Loaning.
Time for boning.
It's time for boning, but
we're going homing. We're gonna loaning. Those loaning. Stop that?
I'm gonna do a freestyle rap.
Oh, he's gonna do it.
It's about Farscape.
When do you want to beat?
Yo, Coup By Clam, great episode. I loved it so much, and I didn't hate it. Nope, I didn't hate it at all. It didn't suck. It was really, really good. You're gonna want to listen to our discussion about the parts we love, just like when I got a concussion, because I hit myself so much in the head from loving it.
Welcome to ScapeChatz episode 41. I'm Alan, and I'm joined by not Kevin, Spencer, Lucas, Barry, Fred, or Monica Frelling-Geller. He is Magellan from ScapeChatz, and we are going to hire more intro writers. This week, we watched Season 4, Episode 10, Coup By Clam, and Episode 11, Unrealized Reality. Coup By Clam was written by new time writer Emily Skopov, directed by Ian Watson, and it aired August 16th, 2002. New time writer? Why did I say that? New writer. This is the first time she's written an episode.
It's the only episode she writes.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
I don't think so.
Why? Oh, it would be unfortunate for us if she wrote more because this episode's a poop.
Oh, I see. You were thinking of her livelihood.
Yeah. I want her to do well.
And I was thinking of her as merely a name and a piece of data. That's what happened there. Can I just come out and say what I thought of this episode?
Favorite of the season?
I think easily the worst non-Maldus episode of Farscape.
Oh my god.
That's
a lot, dude.
I know that's a lot. That's my stance.
I feel like this is gonna be this season's what's the one from season 3 where it's like a Guy Ritchie film and you were like, it's fun, and I was like, it's trash.
You thought that was trash?
I didn't love it as much as you seem to have. I didn't think it was trash. But the difference is I kind of agree with you that this is trash. I'm just saying I enjoyed aspects of it.
Yeah.
But
I didn't hate everything about it, but I think that's part of the reason that I hated it a lot.
Yeah. It seemed like it was going somewhere fun. It's like, oh, we're just goofing around and we all eat some bad food. Because really the plot is like it starts out really simple. We're all on the ship. We're all eating weird food, like weird clams, but they're all like goopy, slimy clams. Clams is the best word, by the way. Clams. And we're going to say it a lot in this discussion. And then they talk about like, oh, we only get to eat 10 times a cycle, so we have to make sure that we like fill up. Like Sikozu like overeats because of that, which 10 times a cycle, that's like 10 times a year. Mm-hmm. That's not a lot of food. They don't eat a lot. I thought it was cool that they like quantified how much they're actually.
Well, Sikozu only eats 10 times a cycle.
It's not all of them.
I think the idea is her species only needs to eat 10 times a
cycle. Oh, that makes more sense. I thought it was just like we don't have enough money to afford food.
No. They die.
Okay, that makes perfect sense.
John would die.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Rigel, the one who's constantly overeating, and they do joke about that plenty in this episode. And then they get on this planet, and the doctor's like, "I can fix it, but only if each of you gives me $1 million." And it's like, "You're a scam doctor." And then they go, and he helps one of them. And then they all eat the different fruit or the different clams, and it's like the color means that they're paired up with someone. It's just the eye-inch bracelet concept again.
Yep.
It's exactly that.
Yep.
And then he gets shot, and I thought that was going to be a joke about like, well, he's dead now. Time to, I don't know, figure it out.
Yeah.
Not dead at all. Him getting shot meant nothing except it introduced the other plot of the episode, which was, let's call it problematic.
Yeah.
This is a planet that they're on where women are seen as lesser folk. So it is, in a lot of ways, a heightened version of the real world. Or, that's like the idea they're going for. And the women are trying to instate a coup.
They say that next episode is when we return to Earth. I think this one.
Oh, yeah, this is basically Earth. What's the difference, right? It's I don't even want to. They're like, oh, we're gonna revolt against the men, and then they try to like give them clams so that they all die because when you eat the clams, you eventually show signs of space madness. Ugh. And then they try to infiltrate the women's clan, and then that's like where the episode gets gross. The way they serve clams to men is by like they have a brothel that come to, and they trick clams there. Yeah, I don't know. Clams, the natural aphrodisiac. This episode is bad. Why is it bad? Let's quantify it.
Yeah, let me lay it down for you because I have a couple reasons why it's bad.
Go for it.
First off, it's always a worse episode of Farscape when the central character arc is given to a non-essential character. Like the character who really sees the most development in this episode is that engineer lady.
The mechanic person?
The mechanic lady.
Yeah.
Who Chiana talks to. Everybody else, and Scorpius.
Oh my god, Scorpius, the secret one cool thing
Scorpius
about this
is the
episode.
only real cool part that I enjoyed about this episode.
Yeah.
But like everybody else in this entire episode is given pretty much nothing related to their character to do.
Yep.
At all.
The girls get to be girls, and their only service there is to be the women, and then they get caught.
And then they get caught.
Like immediately. No competence there. So Koza gets her finger cut off, and you're like, oh, no. Like there's no consequence either. Extra no consequence. Gets her finger cut off, and you're like, oh no. And she's like, I can grow it back. And you're like,
yeah. I didn't even think. Yeah, the girls get caught in this episode that's about like female empowerment.
They say girl power like 8 times.
So that's one thing. Second thing, it's so ham-fisted about what it's trying to do.
Yeah.
It doesn't do it in a capable way.
Oh.
Okay. Third thing. I was really annoyed by the weird metatextual commentary on technobabble that was happening, because the way this episode starts, like the conflict of it starts, is the doctor gives them the clams when he comes to check them for space madness. And it's like, by the way, I have these clams. Why don't you eat some clams? They're eating these clams. Turns out it binds them like an eye-inch bracelet.
Yeah.
And then he's like, hey, so you're bound and I have the cure. I'm a crazy doctor character.
His voice was so annoying, by the way.
I told you about this. He sounded like an arthritic Winnie the Pooh.
I forgot about that. Yep. It's accurate.
And he's like trilling his words and stuff. Anyway, we'll talk about that guy. But they go to him, and when they get to him, he like starts explaining how the clams work again.
Yeah.
He just explained it, and they were like, we don't care. And then he's explaining it again, and they're like, we don't care, stop it. And he keeps talking. And so our main characters become, it's their role in that scene to just be like, this is stupid. Stop with the technobabble. Who cares?
English,
like,
please.
Yeah, it's like you can't do that to me, where the episode on the one hand is asking me to accept this really complex mechanic in order to understand the politics of this world and understand what's going on, while simultaneously telling me about how stupid it is that it's so complicated. Yeah. That was aggravating, so aggravating to me.
Especially because we just had the episode like last week where Rigel's like, just go with it. And it's like, okay, pick one.
Yeah.
You can't give me technobabble and then say like, no, but it's stupid. Like, why are you talking all this stuff? And then like at the same time, it's the whole crux of the episode is that we need to understand the technobabble a little bit. Like,
it's more inviting for two characters to be talking and one person to be like, what about this? And the other character to be like, don't ask. Than to have the situation where one character is just talking and the other character's like, I didn't ask. You know
exactly.
I mean? So that was just, that was frustrating.
And then, whatever, this episode is really dated. We got to say it from now.
Yeah.
The way that it handles, like, gender and sex and sexuality and like the way that you present your gender to other people, it's like offensively bad. It's like, are you kidding me? Like the joke is that John is dressed like a woman. Like who wrote that down and was like, this is fine? And he pulls out a bunch of guns and says that awful. Though, oh my god, do any of you ladies have one of these under your dresses or whatever? And he pulls out the guns, and I was like, I've never hated John before, and I like hate him right now. Yeah. I'm so mad.
Well, and it just has that kind of problematic thing of immediately when John is dressed like a woman, the guy is kind of creepy.
Yeah.
With him. And it's this thing that happens in a lot of plots about men dressing up as women, where it feels like we're not really permitted to see, like, we're not permitted in media a lot of the time to see sexual encroachments of men on women. but we're permitted to see sexual encroachments of men upon men dressed as women,
Right,
as a
which
way
is-
of telling us about the difficulties of being a woman.
Yeah.
And-
Why can't you just show that as like happening to a woman?
Right. There's something about that that's like, oh, now you care because it's a man
Yeah.
dressed as the woman who this is happening to. And that, yeah.
I mean, I don't want to like throw around the word like transphobic or whatever, but just like the jokes of like, oh, you look manly, but like you're a woman, or like the or vice versa, is all just like mired in stuff that I guess in the present day is obviously handled a lot better and talked about a lot more. But to see that stuff in this episode towards the end, and then like we got to talk about the mechanic too,
Yeah.
because that stuff is like peak. You guys didn't realize what you were doing at the time and didn't realize how bad this is.
Yeah.
Because they had an intersex character a little while ago and handled it well enough, other than the fact that they had to show Gianna their genitals to prove it, which is dumb. But whatever. This character, the mechanic, what's their name? I don't know, mechanic person. Transsexual, right? They switch parts.
I couldn't tell. Was that what happened?
Yeah, I
That
think so.
They had an operation to change their gender, or was it just
Nope,
that they were
sex,
wearing...
sex, not their gender.
Sorry. Or was it just that they were wearing a wig?
I think it will, because Gianna does that really awful thing where she like pulls their shirt and it's like, you got boobs, you're a lady. So I think it was, or I don't know if it's either a gender or a sex thing. They definitely were like switching.
Yeah.
Is the point. And they're doing that
Well,
so they're
it
because they're
wasn't-
like,
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
no, just because they're like, oh, women mechanics can't get jobs here. So I decided to be a man, like Mulan style, which it has exactly the same problems as Mulan, which is like, no, it's fucked up. Like,
I mean, they did have that cool moment where that character was introduced where you could... So, okay, first my question is like, was I supposed to think that that was a man?
I think you weren't supposed to be sure. You were supposed to be like, oh.
Yeah, because I knew that it was a female actor. I pretty much think I knew that right away, because I was impressed at how they handled the moment where that character comes on board with
Yeah.
the like guard hat wearing guy,
Mm-hmm.
where you think based on the way that they're staged, okay, guard wearing hat guy is the mechanic. And the characters talk to him as if he's the mechanic, and then she or they or however we're supposed to understand this character, they respond speaking as if they are the mechanic, because they are.
Yeah.
Right. And in that moment I was like, oh, okay, Farscape. Yeah, I was being sexist. You got me. You caught me. I was fooled by the dude wearing the nice clothes thinking it was him. And then Chiana talking to that character was cool, kind of. I gave Chiana something useful to do. But I didn't get anything from it. And then it was never clear to me. Yeah, it was never clear to me like how that was supposed to work out, I guess. And I think it's operating on a level of identity politics that is just less thorough than what we're kind of used to seeing in media now.
Right.
Because I think it was operating on that Mulan level of like, there are men, we know, granted, there are men and women, and like that's what it's taken for granted, first of all.
Yeah.
And then it's like, you can dress as a man temporarily to gain some kind of station, but you're always a woman underneath.
Yeah.
Which, yeah. And at the time that may have, like, that's just what was being thought about, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
And so it maybe they didn't have that perspective to understand what was actually being said by that character portrayal. But that's what we're working with. It's a set of gender and sex politics that's less comprehensive.
And they're clearly trying to play with that stuff. They've been doing it for the whole show, where they like discuss gender and sex politics in a way that other shows don't.
Yes.
So that's why it bums me out when it's a swing and a miss. It's like, oh, you really went for the fences with this episode, like between the women clan and the coup and all of that stuff. But then and they're cool. They're like a cool Amazonian tribe or whatever. They all have those like cool outfits, and they're like good. But then you have this character, Mujambre, by the way, I believe is the name. And they're just like, I don't know. What were you trying to say? Or were you just trying to like throw something out there and be like, I don't know, what do you think?
I think the thing that really bugs me is that it comes back to what I was saying, that none of our main characters, none of Moya's crew really has anything character related to do.
Right.
It just feels like whoever wrote this came in and was like, this is my episode of Farscape to write a story about like this concept that I want to write about. A society where women are actively, what's that word? Discriminated against. Women are actively discriminated against. But it feels like they're kind of using Farscape and putting this veneer of Farscape on top of a story that has nothing to do with the characters, really. And so it feels like it's a sketch of an idea that isn't executed in a way that fits with the show. Because you can deal with these questions in the show. In many ways, it's in the show's DNA.
Yeah.
Especially with the just the fluid sexuality in terms of John and Aaron's relationship, and other things.
Their whole gender role thing, Chiana's sexuality thing, which I thought they were gonna play with, where it's like, oh, maybe she's like okay with being with women because she's talking about like, the character's like, why are you staring at me? And she's like, maybe I think you're cute, and it's like, okay, did she think she was a woman at that time? Did she think she was a man? Like, what are you trying to like make a point about Chiana like being like she doesn't care? Because that makes sense to me. That's how I always read Chiana's character, is that she's just like pan. Like she's like, I love screw everyone. But yeah, it's an uncomfortable episode to watch, and it's like, oh god, this wouldn't fly today at all. This is
ultimately, I get it. Like I get that there's good intention behind the pieces going in here, but it's just not artful at all.
Exactly.
And so for that reason, I find it kind of offensive.
Yeah, totally.
It's an episode of Farscape, and then the like. No, go ahead. If you're
I'm going to make a bigger point, so go ahead.
And I was just going to say, and then the villain and that whole stuff, like the actual mechanics of the episode, made it feel like it was just a mediocre RPG campaign version of Farscape, where everybody's kind of just like a character who's engaging with the mechanics of the world in a very kind of humdrum way. Yeah. As if you're playing a game where like my character's John Crichton, and you're in one of those groups where you don't do dialogue as the characters very often. Right. You just like love doing the combat parts and rolling the dice. Like my character's John Crichton, and he's a handsome dude, and he's smart, trying to figure out what's going on, trying to solve the puzzle of this week. And then the villain is like, ooh, all right, for this week I'm going to throw at them let's see, he kind of looks like a Ichabod Crane. He's got like a really big nose and like a pot belly.
Constantly holding his dumb belly.
Yeah, he's got like a weird voice. Oh, and he's a doctor. Yeah, this will be great. And it just has that very surface level Farscapiness. Yeah. And then there isn't really any substance.
At least for the clam stuff, yeah.
Yes.
And, they're doing the joke of, like, when one of them feels something, the other one does it, which, again, they did exactly that with the eye inch, and that was, like, weirdly repetitive. And then getting back to the problems with this episode's, like, treatment of, like, sex and just, like, horniness also, the, like, Dargo Naranti stuff never made me laugh. I was just, like, uncomfortable by it constantly, especially the scene where Naranti is, like, for some reason having an orgasm. One could argue that she's masturbating. You don't really see it, but she's having that. Dargo's experiencing it. And then I got excited because every week they have to tantalize me. Dargo goes, I'm having an orgasm. I need to run to John. And I'm like, yes. and then John has to be frowning like bro man McGee. And he's like, no, dude, get away from me when that's happening. And I'm like,
don't touch me when you come in.
Seriously. I'm like, come on. Like, y'all should be more comfortable with each other, that you can just be like, something weird's happening. Are you okay? And not be like, whoa, dude, that felt very much like you're like about to get in like a bar fight or something, where it's like, oh, dude, get back up, dude, don't touch me. That was like very off base for those characters. And then like the holding hands thing was like kind of dumb, and they have to like hold hands for several hours, Arns, and it's Sikozu and John together, and then she gets her finger cut off, and then he's like, owie, my finger got cut off. And who's Aaron with?
Rigel.
Aaron's with Rigel, so her whole thing is she's just like full for the whole episode. Yeah, it's whatever.
I don't know. I mean, it answers our question kind of the eye-inch bracelet, like if one person has an orgasm. So hey, thanks Farscape for talking about that.
Well, but it technically doesn't, because we asked about the bracelet. We didn't ask about this. Isn't the bracelet?
I know, but it's the same concept of like you're sharing sensation. Yeah. But then it's like if Naranti was masturbating, then she was, that's not a consensual thing that she was doing. Yeah.
Exactly. Why did she? If that's what she was doing, then why the heck did she do that?
Yeah. Why did she do that? It's so bizarre.
Exactly. That's the stuff from like.
And then it's like, I love Anthony Simcoe. I think he's a great actor, and he has some fun moments in this
be on our show
of comedic acting. Yeah. But I could not tell if I was supposed to read that as comedy, because it's so over the top, like,
Yeah. Oh my god.
Yeah, and I mean that comes down to the writing and the directing too. It's not like I'm putting that on Simcoe's shoulders, but I mean it raises that question of like how are we supposed to read that scene?
She's like making food and trying to come up with a cure, but then also wanking it. It's what do you do? Naranti in this episode was a complete puzzle to me. Yeah, it's like what do you even try? Because she's already a puzzle, and it's like oh you do stuff, but you maybe have some weird motivation in the background, and then it's like no, you're just a force of chaos right now. You were here to make things complicated and to ruin Dago's day.
And then there's like pee drinking.
Yep, and then he drinks her pee. And then he has that moment where he's like, maybe it's not that bad. He like tastes it.
Okay, great. I didn't mind the Aaron Rigel connection. I think that's funny. Like if we're just going on a Farscape level of Rigel farts, then it's funny to have him paired with Aaron and Aaron's farting or like almost farting. Exactly. I'm fine with that. But if it's like, if that was the only kind of silly thing that was happening with a pair, I'd be fine with that.
And then continuing the like, Dargo, although he is a Luxon and his default state is always violence, they like always push it a little bit further than I expect them to.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh, it should be working. You won't feel what the other person feels anymore. And his first instinct is to punch Naranti in the face.
Yeah,
Dargo.
Like, whoa, just pinch her or something.
Yeah, seriously, that was excessive. And then she's like, I sneezed.
Or tickle her or anything.
Yeah, you didn't have to sock it to her, seriously. Yeah. And, you know, Naranti has like the decent we didn't test moment where she's like, oh, this is great. We finally get to like hang out. I really want to like get to know you. I really want to pass this test that these podcast boys came up with for the two of us. And then we get into the female empowerment stuff. And then the sex change, and then Dr. Rigel, which is kind of cute.
That was kind of funny, yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, he says Toomey, the name of the hook-nosed evil doctor. He's like, Toomey's at a colon convention, which is funny, I guess. And then there's like he's like, oh, the bad guy that comes up to him, he's like, take your pants off, we got to test your skin or something, which is whatever. And then like, there's nothing that like, I wrote all these notes down, and I'm just like, yeah, I wrote it down because it was interesting, and I was meant to laugh at it. I didn't.
Yeah.
There's some bad cross-dressing. Sikoza loses a finger.
Yeah, I think one moment of comedy that actually rang true with me, and the only part I liked out of them being like, stop the technobabble, was Simcoe nails a delivery. They're told some fact, and then he's like, who cares?
Right.
That was a perfect line delivery.
Yeah.
The rest of it was annoying. I want to talk about Scorpius a little, just to like kind of bring us up in our mood. About this episode.
Yeah. He's great. So he saved the day.
Yeah, he did. He's kind of off on his own. He's hanging out with. So first of all, he sees the doctor, and the doctor's like, "Oh, you got Scaran DNA. You can't.
Scarans can't come on. Yeah.
Sorry." And he's like, "I'm mad about that, I guess. But like, why do I care? I don't know."
Yeah, exactly.
Because why are any of us going on the planet at all? At the beginning, they have no reason to want to go on the planet because they just want the mechanic to fix their ship, and then it's like, why would we care about going on the planet?
I don't know.
Anyway, so he's hanging on the ship, and he hangs out with Hat Guy, and they're walking down the hall. Hat Guy's like, yeah, our planet's pretty cool.
Oh, yeah.
We hate women. Women are the worst. And Scorpius is like, yeah, sure. Right. Women. And then the guy he's so cartoonish.
Yep.
He keeps being like, yeah, we lost 3 good men. And then Scorpius is like, 3, huh? And then he's like, yeah, 3. And the important part is they were men. That's what made it sad. Men are great, right? Women. So that guy was awful and no dimension whatsoever. That's a big problem with this plot, is that there's no dimension to the world. Because if your whole planet is just predicated on like, men are being bad and women are being discriminated against or suppressed or whatever, then it's like, okay, then they shouldn't be.
Right? They should win.
We did it. Thanks for teaching me a valuable lesson about gender.
Seriously.
So much. So they're having that, and those scenes are not great. And then the guy with the hat hears the mechanic talking about how the mechanic was a woman and is being secretive. So he goes down the ladder. He's like, hey, I heard you talking about that. Scorpius comes down the ladder just as easy as pie, takes a step off the ladder, steps behind the guy, grabs his head, snaps his neck, and says, he's like, please resume or something like that.
That's like the best part.
It's like, wow, all right. Thank you, Scorpius. I think that was probably my favorite line.
Resume your work.
Resume your work, yeah. And then he saves the day with something that doesn't make any sense.
It kind of, well, it's just like, isn't it, correct me if I'm wrong, but he like eats more of the clams so as to further split the pain that they're all feeling, and he's like, I'll take in more of it so that y'all can get out.
So the idea behind the clams is
the idea behind the clams is what we should, if we had names for episodes.
If more than one here's the Frelling technobabble for this.
Go for it.
You have a clam.
Yep.
The clam is made of bacteria that can feel the pain of all the other bacteria, and they want so desperately to hang out together.
Same.
If they're put in different places, then they'll feel each other's pain until they can hang out again. So if two people eat the bacteria, then if you ate part of it, then you're going to feel whatever the other person's feeling because the bacteria are communicating with each other.
Right.
The bacteria will not be able to escape your body on their own, which means that if you never get them out, you're going to die from sensory overload.
Which resembles space madness.
Okay, great. That didn't really have any relevance
At
to
all.
the episode at all, but thanks for that. So that is what's going on there, and they know that they have this cure. They need to get some clams from the women. There are different color clams, and if you get the same color clam as what you ate, it helps make the cure.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. So what Scorpius does is they're kind of being tormented, and this is their 11th hour. And he says, hey, pilot, I got a great idea. Hear me out. I'm going to eat a shit ton of clams.
We're just going to snack on some clams.
And then
he like goes into a little room. He's like, this is my room.
This is my clam room.
This is the clam room. Here's some candles.
Yeah.
Here we go.
And I'm going to force my clam inside of me to not feel pain.
Oh,
so that
he has like pain suppressing abilities.
Yeah. So he's going to probably because of the heat issues that he has, right? So he's just gotten very good at regulating his own body and his own body's response to pain, which makes sense, kind of. So he eats the clam and forces everyone to not feel bad.
Yeah.
Yay, Scorpius saved us. Kind of cool, kind of doesn't make a ton of sense, but whatever. And then at the end, when they're getting the clams out of them, they're like, oh, okay, well, that was our day. We got the clams out. By the way, Scorpius helped us. He was great. Smash cut 2, Scorpius.
Oh, he's vomiting.
Puking up the clam. End of episode.
That was one of the weirder
stingers. Weird way to end an episode.
Totally. He's fine.
The question of why Scorpius did that is a great question.
That's what I was going to ask. Thank you. Why do?
Why do?
Well, because they're a good resource for him, and he doesn't want them to die.
I guess, but a resource to do what? That's still a big question.
Pilot would kick him off of Moya if he led to the rest of them.
But why does he care?
He has nowhere else to go.
So?
What do you mean, so? The only people that will take you in. You want them? You're okay with them dying? Where else would he go? The Peacekeepers won't take him. The Scarens won't take him.
Yeah, so he just goes somewhere else.
You want him to craze his way out of this and just go off and fly and be fun with town.
I just want a good reason why he's here with them, and I think it has to do probably with wormholes and John and stuff.
Yeah, that too.
But then it's why save everyone? And then so maybe then John would be like, why didn't you save everyone? It's just Scorpius's presence is still a very big question mark. And probably intentionally so, but I just am getting progressively more annoyed by how many question marks this season is leaving open,
right?
Without really addressing them. So Aaron and the baby, where Aaron was, big questions that we're just not talking about. Why Scorpius is here, big question we're not talking about. And I would have rather we learned about those than seen this dumb episode where somebody tried to give their message in a way that the message come across.
I think the Scorpius stuff. Well, okay. The one lingering thing that I always have been confused by is John takes this is unrelated. John takes the drug to forget Aaron.
Yeah. He's
on a ship with her. So what does forgetting her mean? Does it just mean forgetting the anxiety that comes with being around her?
I think it numbs the emotional pain.
Okay. That makes sense. That makes enough sense to me. That's the thing I wish they could explore a little bit more, or at least just talk about the baby some more. Don't leave that in the background.
Yeah.
That was a big deal, and they kind of just said we'll take care of it. We're all here, And then the Scorpius stuff, it's gonna blow up in someone's face in either a good way or a bad way at some point for sure. And we're getting there. So
we're getting there.
Before we get there, let's read the background info.
You know what, Alan? This time, I think I want you to read it. That's really? How much I tested this episode.
You don't even want to touch it.
Yeah.
Okay then. I guess I can do this.
Mom.
It's almost like I'm reading from a thing. Toomey's facial design was inspired by Robert Helpman's appearance in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. It's the guy with the top hat and the big nose, that's all. I just looked up pictures of them. That's accurate. The club scenes were shot at a suitable dive in the Darlinghurst area, Sydney. That's grammatically wrong. Darlinghurst area of Sydney. But yeah, sure. There's a dive bar. That's great. Good for you.
Can I just say something about the villain? He gave me
Toomey?
Yeah, maybe this is a little far.
Escape.
But he gave me a very like Shylock vibe.
Oh yeah,
that was a big part of what bugged me.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Alan says because I've heard that it's a Shakespeare thing, right? No, yeah. Do I not bleed? That guy. We were just quoting The Merchant of Venice before this.
Yeah, that's what we do in our free time.
And we just quote Shakespeare. God, we're cool.
Specifically The Merchant of Venice.
And also, the term Shylock is a slur. Did you know that?
Yep.
He did, though. The like nose thing, the stomach thing, the like talking about eating. And, it's
like he's kind of a smart type of character who's taking advantage of you for money. Mm-hmm. It's like,
it's very, I
don't like this archetype you're playing off
Exactly.
of.
It's bad. That's the question whenever they do weird aliens on Farscape and in sci-fi in general, like in Star Wars, it's like, are the Trade Federation people Asian stereotypes? Yes, but like they're also aliens. But then you're clearly expecting us to make the comparison, like Dexter. Someone told me recently that they're like, oh, Dexter, the Armenian stereotype, and I was like, what? Dexter from Star Wars Episode 2. Isn't that kind of accurate?
Yeah,
a little bit. Not all the Star Wars alien races are cool. Ben Browder was whitelisted. Nope, let's read that again. Ben Browder was whistled at as he walked from the trailers to the set when dressed as a woman. That's frilled. That's bad. That's so bad. Stop. The script did not have Rigel biting off Toomey's nose. Fiona Gentle took the nose and put it on her mantle at home after the scene was shot. Wait a minute. Was Fiona Gentle Toomey? Excuse me. What? You remember Fiona Gentle? No. Tokot? Badipu.
What? Badupu was this guy?
Badupu.
No, Fiona Gentle's one of the puppeteers.
Oh, she's probably doing the Rigel. Badupu. I miss Badupu. You really need to listen to the whole podcast. The scenes in the nightclub with Creighton and Rigel were an homage to the classic movie Some Like It Hot.
More like an homage to the classic movie White Chicks.
Yeah, there you go. Not out at this point, but yes. I wonder if White Chicks was inspired by Farscape.
Probably.
The script originally called for Crichton to flash, and Browder later questioned what Jim Henson's Creature Shop would have provided for the makeup. Flash? Like, we're talking like, I don't want to know. I actually don't want to know. You know what? This was Ian Watson's final directing job on Farscape. Oh no! And he used the Dutch angle for every single shot to emphasize the effect of the clams. He's like salt the earth, like, I'm ruining this episode, goodbye, because that many Dutch angles is nauseating. Yeah, that's kind of funny. I'm sorry, Ian Watson, please come back. I know you won't, but Browder was the one that suggested that Naranti have 3 colors of urine all at the same time. Why?
All right, thanks Ben.
Thanks Ben,
my
dude.
Write that one down.
That's hilarious.
He just comes to the writer's room and he like,
hello,
hey guys, it's Ben.
Hey Ben, how you doing?
I just want to run an idea by you. I don't know if you're going to be able to fit this in, but I really feel like Naranti has 3 colors of urine
3
simultaneously. Yeah, three colors.
Episode airs tomorrow. Print it. We're in.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Bye. Great. Oh, Ben. The Creature Shop supplied colored KY jelly for Dr. Toomey's constantly dripping nose. One staff member was on hand at all times to refill between shots.
Necessary.
Not even necessary. I barely noticed it. I only noticed it when it was a big deal.
I thought that was going to be the cure. His snot was going to be the cure.
Yeah, that works. And yeah, this is the last episode before returning Crichton to the real Earth. Good thing we watch 2 a week, or else that would have been a real thick spoiler.
Yep. I can't tell if watching this in conjunction with Unrealized Reality hate it more or hate it less.
That's a good question, because it's like, well, if I had watched just this one, I would have been like, maybe this show is bad. Maybe this kind of episode is the reason why people say that they hate season 4.
Yep.
But then you watch Unrealized Reality, you're like, no. They got it. They
know what they're doing.
They got it. Okay. Phew. Speaking of Unrealized Reality, let's discuss that. But first, it's time for the Moyabag.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Moyabag for episode 41. This is Magellan here to read your questions, comments, concerns, flamments, and flintstones, chewable vitamins. Okay, as always, there are 3 main methods by which you can reach us: email, Twitter, and our weekly Reddit thread. No emails to read this week, but you can always email us at scapechats@gmail.com. That's scapechats@gmail.com. reddit.com. Onto Twitter. Surprisingly, hey, our Twitter handle is the same as the name of the show and our email address. It's at ScapeChatz. As always, we received our weekly Twitter memo from talking about the 2 episodes we discussed last week, I Shrink Therefore I Am, and A Prefect Murder. Starting with I Shrink, Omen says 2 words, aggressively fine. I do not care, I do not care, I do not care. But you gotta get through this to get to the good stuff, so do it. I personally stopped with about 10 minutes left to go, finished my rewatch of Prayer, started bringing home the beacon because I had to cleanse my brain, stopped that, and then never finished the episode. You know what, Omens? That's fair. Omens, knowing how important this is to me, offers a Translator Microbe's explanation for the moment where Aaron and Dargo start speaking gibberish to distract their captors. She says that they are most likely speaking in some kind of code, or maybe some nonsense language like Pig Latin. That's entirely possible. I think I'll take it, sure. Here we have a highlighted quote from Rigel's little speech about just taking things as they are. He says, "Everything's weird, life is weird, you've stuck around long enough, this just happens, get used to it." Omen's excited that Jorpius is a thing. John's gratuitous Spanish has a very Princess Bride type feel to it. You killed my father, now you will die. Donde está la cucaracha? Yeah, that's maybe what they're going for? I don't know. He's just weird. And finally, we mentioned John's self-medication. This is the thing of the next few episodes. At least with Aaron, and it doesn't so much blow up in his face as destroy him internally. Very cool, very cool. Moving on to A Prefect Murder, Omen says, I remember hating this episode. I didn't even rewatch it. It's not repulsive or anything like Eat Me, it's just really, really nonsensical. I get what Blue was saying about Twice Shy being tied, but Twice Shy is just one tiny step up from this clusterfrell due to the various relationships that get explored. Honestly, I think why this episode sucked was because it wasn't written directed by one of the main house, and this is the sort of episode that could have been maybe done well if it had. I think that's an interesting argument to make. It'd be cool to do a kind of, at the end of ScapeChatz, to do some kind of quantitative, maybe not quantitative, like down to a science, but some sort of review of people whose writing we like the best, people whose directing we like the best. I know that Buffy has this like amazing database of fan ratings of all its episodes, and you can sort by like director and writer or by characters in the episode and see kind of if there are any trends within that. It's a cool idea. Instead, this episode lacks everything I love about this show. Audience surrogate, gang of weirdos, positive sexual representation, wonderful plot, attentive Aaron's son. The John and Aaron shooty scene is wonderful. Go Ben and Claudia, their chemistry is insane. Yeah, that's very true. And Omens finishes by saying that our love for Anthony Simcoe gives them life. Thank you. Anthony Simcoe gives us life. That's all we have from Twitter this week. As always, you can tweet at us at ScapeChatz. You can also find our weekly threads at reddit.com at www.reddit.com/r/Farscape. Those go up every week along with the episode. Top comment this week from Reddit user LeoChris. Very interesting. LeoChris says, allow me to begin with some old natural election Don Quixote comments that I didn't get around to writing last week. All right, I'll allow it. I always assumed Pilot was the Aaron vote due to their connection, but I never thought too much about it. Yeah, that's sort of what I realized as I was talking in that episode. That kind of makes sense. I also wanted to point out how interesting it was that even in Stark's dream world, Zahn would still tell him to be silent. Whether this was just proof that things weren't going Stark's way by this point of the game is questionable, though. I personally like to think he hoped to preserve his Zan as faithfully as possible underneath the shell of the male Zan. Anyway, just food for thought. Yeah, I think that's true. Also, Stark strikes me as somebody who probably has pretty low self-esteem, so that might be a factor as well. Moving on to this week, I enjoyed your dramatic reading of Sukozu Rigel's lampshade hanging, and you know, this kind of just go with it viewer, suspend your disbelief scene should technically annoy me, but somehow here they pulled it off. Yeah, I think it just, the fact that it's in the 4th season is a big help, because they're, to that point in the 4th season, there weren't really that huge of dramatic stakes based around the science. Because if you're in season 3, so much of the tension of season 3 is wrapped up in the John clone thing and in emerging understanding of the wormhole stuff. And so if you threw in a scene where it's like, yeah, this stuff doesn't matter, I feel like that would be pretty upsetting. So it's a balance, and it's all about timing. LeoChris also says, I don't necessarily feel like Chiana's powers are a retcon. If anything, they're just evolving. I haven't seen these episodes in quite a while, but I remember that's how I originally perceived it. Yeah. The subtitles call him Ka. That's hilarious. I wonder if Zan would be Zoto. Can't wait for next week. Reddit user Nigmus, something like that. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce it. Responds to LeoChris talking about the suspension of disbelief in the scene with Rigel and Sokozu, saying it's entirely believable because it's in the context of the characters. That's a good point, because Sokozu is overly analytical and book smart, talking with the centuries-old guy who's encountered crap like Maldus, seen someone nearly kill their ship by draining its youth, and seen the guy they all rag on for being the cultural equivalent of a dumb out-of-townie nuke a dreadnought out of existence by sciencing a chunk of a star at its face. Yeah, very good point. If by this point in the series anybody has earned the right to say, kid, I was seeing shit that was actually scientifically impossible before you were born, and the faster you learn to just deal with it, instead of complaining that it's not fair, that reality refuses to conform to realism, the better. Without coming off as patronizing or sounding forced, it's buckwheat. Yeah, I think that's definitely true. And definitely a great reminder, just the weird shit that happens in Farscape, y'all. Domain 101's up in this. Oh my gosh, it's a crowded Reddit thread this week. It's wonderful. Domain 101 says, I might be one of the few people that actually enjoys a prefect murder, so here's my defense of it. I will say I don't remember what I said in the episode, but looking back on it, I didn't hate it. It's just not amazing. Domain 101 says, like we've seen in episodes like Scratch and Sniff, I like when Farscape plays with non-linear storytelling. Is Aaron just having visions of events, or are they occurring and she's having something of an out-of-body experience? I appreciate the mystery in the build-up and the ability to tell a story without spoon-feeding the audience. Also, tonally, both story and visual are fairly unique for a Farscape episode. Other than different destinations, I can't recall another episode with such a limited color palette. This is also an episode where the stakes aren't terribly high, which allows a brief exploration of another culture's system of governance. We got a bit of this in the regrettable Dream a Little Dream on Litigara, but I think it's put to much better use here. So the color palette thing is interesting to think about. I don't think of Farscape's color palette as being particularly vibrant or diverse in general, though. But then Blue Blaze Spear in his reply completely agrees with Domain 101, so maybe I'm crazy. Because Blue Blaze Spear says it seems washed out almost to the point of being black and white episode, or maybe more like a sepia episode. Yeah, so forget what I just said. The exploring another culture of governance, another culture system of governance thing is definitely fascinating. I question whether or not that is Farscape, because that's sci-fi, but is that Farscape? I don't know. Domain 101 wraps up by saying, overall, I understand why everybody doesn't love it. Aside from the things I've mentioned, the underlying plot is straightforward and a bit predictable, but I guess I see this episode as more than the sum of its parts, and the bits they got right overshadow the misses. Or maybe I just like Space Murder, She Wrote episodes. They're fun. Blue Blaze Spear in the comment I just mentioned also says, as I reflect upon it, I think that this episode's biggest crime is the same one committed by all the episodes between Promises and Unrealized Reality. Moya's crew is essentially just running in place instead of advancing the Farscape story. That's me snapping in approval. There are occasional good character beats for all of these episodes, but nothing that couldn't be put into episodes that are actually moving the ball forward. Maybe it's the case that by the time a prefect murder rolled around, I could feel the narrative momentum starting to come to a grinding halt, and that's why I was so put off by it. That being said, I don't think it's a particularly good or even average episode. At this point, I've just come to expect more from Farscape. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think that's where a lot of my distaste with Coup By Clam came from as well, because that felt like a full stop. A prefect murder, you can kind of say there's some John and Aaron stuff going on, and it's about them still trying to reconcile and not really doing that very well, but a prefect murder is just a Coup By Clam is just trash. It's pure trash. Blue Blaze Spear also left their own comment a little further down in the thread, saying, I'll just admit this right up front. Tormented Space is a bust. It's absolutely fascinating in theory and on paper, but none of that really makes it to the screen. What makes it to the screen is that it isn't much different than the Uncharted territories, just Moya's crew hopping from set piece to set piece and having to interact with a revolving door of new, throwaway space a-holes. Yeah, exactly. That's why I didn't quite get why it was a big deal Yeah, it doesn't feel any different at all. Once again, we get a dramatic reading that is supplemented by secondary audio. Having the Moya noise in the background was an amusing touch. If we weren't so close to the finish line, I'd expect that you get to the point where you're incorporating Foley work. Hey, you never know. Just because there's not much time left doesn't mean we can't. Hey, do it. Blue Bay Spear was also surprised that it took us so long to point out the fact that Crichton has been self-medicating to deal with his circumstances. I'll just add this to the conversation. You know how the opening episode for each season has a title that's a short thesis statement for the season as a whole? This season's first episode was called Crichton Kicks. In case anybody else is curious about what Blue Bay Spear means, the first episode of season 1 was called Premiere. The first episode of season 2 was called Find the Baby. The first episode of season 3 was called Season of Death. And the first episode of season 4 was called Crichton Kicks. Something to think about, I guess. I don't know if I agree that the title thing lines up perfectly, but we can definitely read more into titles now, as that's something we've mentioned before. Blue Bay Spear also says, I wouldn't say that a prefect murder is my least favorite episode of Farscape ever, but it certainly is my least favorite from season 4. For me, the biggest indictment of this episode is that while I'm usually quite verbose with little provocation, I have nothing to say about this episode. Coup By Clam does some interesting humor involving gender identity, and I'll be interested in your reaction. You just heard it. I hated it. It might be one of those things that was fine 15 years ago but wouldn't fly today. Yep, it's one of those things. And we're finally getting to Unrealized reality, where the plot actually kicks in and things finally feel like they're headed somewhere. By the way, we forgot to mention about Coup By Clam, the weird scene where Rigel force feeds Clam to the doctor guy and bites off his nose, and how biting off the nose plays into this weird, I think it plays into the Shylock imagery that I'm reading here, and kind of like, your nose, this thing, I don't know. I could write a whole paper about that. Finally, we've got a comment here from Dr. Apocalypse. Dr. Apocalypse, your name is amazing. I loved saying it, so I really hope you comment more. Dr. Apocalypse says, I have just recently tuned into your podcast, and I enjoy it. The interactions between you two are hilarious, and I look forward to future podcasts. Thank you. Just wanted to note that the reason the crew started talking in their native tongues during negotiations was that they became aware that John was in the vents. The Mercs had enhanced hearing, and they started to hone in on his location. They simply tried to buy John some time. I thought it was important to mention. Yeah, that's true. I don't know that we were disputing why they were doing it. I think it was just more a matter of how they were speaking in a way that wasn't translated. But I guess we talked about it. They were probably speaking gibberish and we're overthinking it. But yeah, thanks for bringing that to the table. Doc Apocalypse, I'm sorry, I'm already shortening your name. Dr. Apocalypse goes on to say, other than that, I agree 100% in regards to a prefect murder. Definitely one of the weakest episodes of season 4. Keep up the good work. You know what? You all should keep up the good work by emailing us at ScapeChatz@gmail.com, tweeting at us, ScapeChatz, at ScapeChatz on Twitter, and visiting these weekly Reddit threads at reddit.com/r/Farscape. All right, well, I just read a lot of stuff. So now it's time to stop reading and start talking about the next episode, Unrealized Reality.
And we're back. The second episode that we watched this week was Season 4, Episode 11, Unrealized Reality, which was written by David Kemper, directed by Andrew Prouse, and it aired August 23rd, 2002 in the US. And we're joined by a guest for this episode discussion.
Hello.
Hello, it's our buddy Hugo, aka Reddit user LeoChris. You're finally on the show. Yay!
Yay!
I've been waiting for this.
I've been waiting and you haven't let me on. No, we're very happy to have you, man.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. I want to start just by briefly asking you, what is your history with Farscape, and also why did you choose to come on for this episode?
Okay, well, I saw Farscape when it originally first aired, but dubbed in French, because French is my first language. I'm French Canadian.
Nice.
So I was like, say, a year behind, and the first time I really caught on to something live was actually Peacekeeper Wars. The rest of the time I was always like delayed, but Peacekeeper Wars was like, I finally get to watch Farscape live. And as far as this episode, well, I think it's like a turning point in the season, but it's one of the comments that Magellan made in an earlier podcast about how he'd like an episode talking about translator microbes for 45 minutes, where he just like explained why and how they work. And this is that episode, but for wormholes.
Yeah, that's true.
At some point for me, this episode was like, hey, here's multiverse theory 101, but it's like our unique Farscape take on it, and I really like that about it. I also think that this was an amazing episode to parallel with Coup By Clam, which is just like a stinky poo-poo episode, and then it's like, this is this season's human reaction, basically, is how I thought about it.
It's definitely a turning point. I mean, just look at the end of the episode. It's not going to be like pee jokes next week.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Hopefully. And even just like just the ideas of where we're going from here on out. Like that last shot is so like scary and yet exciting at the same time. You're like, oh, really? This can all happen now. Now that we have fully put to bed the like questions of what wormholes are and how they work, and we fully understand the mechanics of them and why it's important that John, keep that information safe. It's like, oh, we have a lot of breathing room to do fun stuff with the shows, like crunchy sci-fi stuff. I want to start though by talking about the stuff that happens before everything kind of goes crazy, because there's definitely some like janky green screen when when John initially is like out in space and he's like, I'm just hanging out here, and Aaron and the rest of them are looking at it. It's like Aaron and Shiana, and they're like, oh, humans are weird. Ha 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 ha. They like make fun of humans.
It's like, oh, 26 symbols. It shouldn't be hard, but it is.
Yeah, exactly. Because Aaron's learning the alphabet, which good, very, very Farscape. And then he's just sitting out there like, I feel like a wormhole's going to show up. And then whoopsie, it does totally show up.
Although I have to say that the cold open is one of my favorite moments in the episode, and it's Pilot and Rigel, and Pilot just looks at Rigel with contempt, and he's all like, you were deposed in a coup led by your own cousin.
Oh, yeah. I forgot what the actual line is. I think we should pull up the transcript, but that was, yeah. It's like...
Yeah, that's the line. You were deposed in a coup led by your own cousins.
Yeah, there you go.
I think I don't want to gloss entirely over the Chiana and Aaron conversation, because I think it is really cool that we're continuing to show that Aaron's putting effort into trying to reconcile with John, and pairing that directly with John's floating out in space and his Aaron drugs are wearing off. Mm-hmm. And Dargo's kind of finally caught him and is confronting him about the whole self-medication thing. And so we see that we're reminded at the front of this episode what the character problems are that are going on, and then we're kind of allowed to digest that and then move forward, which I really appreciate just right off the bat.
Right. It's a good table setting moment. And then it also has the same thing where John tells Dargo, Dargo finds out that he's been doing these drugs, and he's like, oh, do they work? Or whatever, and he's like, yeah, I have to when I double the dose, they work.
And Noranti is like proposing to Dargo to give him drugs as well.
Yeah, and Dargo has this great line where he says, if you take anything this witch gives you, you half the dose. Instead of double it, yeah.
Dargo, it ain't none of your business, forget about it. And then Noranti gets mad at Dargo. It's the first time Noranti's ever gotten mad. She's like, oh, soulless Luxon. You're like, damn, I'm sorry. And then he just squashes his communicator, which, okay, he got in a fight and he broke an essential piece of equipment. Dargo, come on.
We know Luxons have anger issues.
That's fair. I was just like, I really hope that's easy to replace, because you have 7 of those. We now have fewer.
I'm sure the RDs can get some.
Yeah, I mean, if they come from Moya, then she can just poop one of them out or something. And then stuff gets weird. John goes through the wormhole. Whoosh, 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 theme song. And then the episode truly begins. And we're introduced to a new... Is that an ancient? Is that...
So, clarification, the ancients were a modified version of this guy's race. There's some race that lives in, I guess, an alternate dimension or just an alternate plane of existence. That part is kind of taken for granted, I think, because so much about wormholes is being explained. But the ancients like Jack the Ancient, who we met in A Human Reaction and saw various times throughout the show. They're modified versions of these guys so that they can live in meat space, basically, and interact with meat people. And this guy's not a meat person.
It's Einstein.
Yeah.
And he's vegan. He's not a meat person.
That's true.
Yep.
Sorry, bad joke.
That's our stock and trade.
Yep, you're already in the club. Einstein was cool. I always love it when John interacts with higher beings, because it really reminds us that it's so good to have an everyman on your show, and then just have them talk to someone who's like the Wizard of Oz, just like, oh, look at all the magic and like science in the world. And he's like, that's pretty neat. What can I do with that? Because his first thing when he goes to that world is like, oh, it looks like Kansas in the winter. Like, it's just that's his anchor for how weird things can get. It's like he still has a very stable center, I guess.
And as an American, his first reflex is to try to shoot the guy.
Exactly. As we've said before, John is always he doesn't want to be a shoot first, ask later, but he kind of is. Like he's torn between that character.
Well, he's a pull gun first, then ask a little, then shoot, then finish asking.
Yep. And then he also has to shoot out like 10 pop culture references where he's like, Nanook, Beelzebub. You're like, shut
Time
up.
Bandits? Yeah.
Time Bandits? Oh, yeah, that whole part where Einstein's like, time. And he's like, is up? Time. Flies? Time. Bandits? Time. Wounds all heals. Time. Rosemary and time. And that's how they're like introduced to each other. And then Einstein is talking to him about like, oh, you need to see what all the different dimensions are like. And we get sent to the first unrealized reality, which is the pilot.
Yeah, so I want to clear just a little bit about what it means to send him into an unrealized reality. Just set that at the beginning. Einstein is, the whole purpose of this interaction is that meat people having wormhole technology could endanger the fabric of space-time. Just that's the gist. And so Einstein knows that John has got the wormhole knowledge. He knows it was given to him by Jack the Ancient. He says a line where he's like, I trust the being who gave it, who trusted you. So now I got to figure out why the Frel you were given anything to begin with. And he puts John in these unrealized realities. In case you didn't know what they were called, he repeats it like 10 times throughout the episode, just so you know.
It's also the title of the episode.
So. It's also the title, yep.
Yeah.
just to be 100% clear. He puts John into these unrealized realities that John can see the dangerous nature of causality, and how if you're put back into a place that you already were, then you could cause some crazy shit to happen. Anyway, so that's the gist of it. So like you were saying, he goes into the first unrealized reality, which is the pilot episode. What did you guys think of that? I thought that was a really cool sequence, and it was also weird to see Dargo with like the pale face.
Yeah.
And like my understanding of this is that most of it is archive footage.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because it looks significantly worse than the show does currently.
It does.
The first thing that I had was the same reaction I did when that scene happened, which was like how cool it is that John comes onto a ship and it's a sci-fi show, and instead of it being like, oh, we're all gonna like get introduced to you, everyone's speaking different languages and it's frelling terrifying. He's like, oh my god, what is anyone saying? Why are we yelling? What's going on? And then the microbes get shot into his leg, and he lives through that first scene where they're all getting attacked and meets Zahn and Ugly Dargo. Not my
not my Dargo.
That's your favorite
not my
Dargo.
No, not at all.
Yeah. It was I loved that aspect of it where it it did feel very chaotic in a way that felt realistic. Like, oh, if you were transported back to this random time that you were in, it would be very overwhelming. But also John was in on it. Like, he knew more or less what was going on. There wasn't a moment where he was surprised by it.
Yeah.
Which I actually think is also a really great move. Because there are times on the show where they're very selective about whether John is shocked by something, because I think that only serves the audience to a certain extent, right? Because you want your protagonist to be shocked or to be taken aback insofar as it helps you feel more at ease with how chaotic things are, but you also want your protagonist to have some level of confidence or situational awareness so that you can feel confident that you are having information relayed to you in a way that's like real. So those little, go ahead.
Sorry. I feel like he's definitely like genre savvy at some point, like at this point, like when he's calling out the tongue and
that was my favorite part.
he definitely knows what's going on, and that's like the best thing about all of these realities is that he is, playing scenes whether or not he was originally in them in the timeline that we've seen or not. He's like, it kind of comes around at the end where the Einstein tells him like, hey, if you're gonna get stuck in one of these, you have to commit to it. You have to like play your part exactly as you would have if you were in it normally, and you cannot diverge too much because you're going to break everything if you keep doing that. So I thought that stuff was really neat.
Yeah, that's actually something really important to think about, that the vibe of the crew throughout the show has always been very irreverent and very disruptive. And it's important to understand that part of what Einstein is doing is saying you can't do that anymore. Like, you have to be extremely conscious of the consequences of your actions. You're smart enough to get what this technology can do, but you're really not thinking through, if you end up in the nightmare scenario where you're teleported back 10 minutes or an hour before you left, how do you deal with that? You have to do it exactly, precisely as you would have. Otherwise, you, destroy reality or like completely alter it.
I feel like this episode is a game changer because it raises the stakes completely.
Yeah, definitely.
Like,
he can no longer just like, they can't just like have fun. It's like, oh no, all of the like weird stuff you guys have been doing, like you need to, make a plan and go somewhere and have some intent, please.
Well, because there's that line that's repeated over and over, that destination is key.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is really, it ties into a lot of stuff we've been thinking about this show. That idea of like, so many of the characters' motivations are about having a concept of home in mind, or a concept of mission, or the place that they're going. And some characters have been unmoored from that over the course of the last few episodes. Characters like Dargo or Aaron. And so here's Einstein coming in and reiterating, it's not, the destination is incredibly important to what you're doing.
Yeah.
I think that's just a really cool line to kind of, to, like we're saying, to show how the game is changing, or how we're kind of returning to a place of purpose in the show, by reminding ourselves that destination is above all else the most important thing when you're kind of navigating these journeys in this universe.
Hugo, I wanted to ask you, because I know you're a big Jewel fan. Jewel saw a brief return in this episode in the form of those like confessional scenes that kind of, they follow up basically every dimension split, and it's just like people from John's life talking about him as if he's like either he just died or he's been lost for years, and like what they think of him. And like
it changes from he's a great guy to he's an asshole to I don't know who he is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which all three of those are very like relevant to the way that John sees himself, and that he sees how other people view him. Because when it's like, oh, we all love John. John's a great dude. He won the football game. He was great in bed. And then just like masculinity issues, where towards the end, one of his like former partners is like, he had a tiny dick. And you're like, okay, John, I see what you're worried about in these different dimensions.
The one I remember is Zahn saying she was traumatized by Unity.
Oh, yeah, that one's messed up. That one's like, she's like, I did Unity with him. Worst decision of my life. And then Jewel has one of my favorite lines. That's why I brought her up, is she's like, whenever he touched me, I felt like such a warmth and a kindness. Like, it's not like a sexual thing. It's just like he had a soul, that like a very unique soul kind of thing. And it was just nice to see Tammy McIntosh again. And then later, when when it wasn't actually her, that was weird. That was very strange.
See, but I'm jumping ahead, but they said that Virginia shot her footage when they did John Quixote. Yeah. And I'm convinced that that's true for Tammy and Paul as well, because they're also not in the body swaps.
That's true.
Oh, interesting.
Their actors aren't in the body swaps. People play them though. What's the actor who plays Stark?
It's Sikozu Riley Hill.
No. What's the actor, like the real life actor that plays Stark?
Paul Goddard.
Paul Goddard had like hair, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Like definitely, it's been a while.
It's a while. Like
which was
the air Stark had on was weird. It's not normal, and I went back, and it's not its John Quixote hair either.
Yeah.
So,
Oh yeah, because he had some hair in that, right?
He had hair in the interviews. Yeah.
Also, his mask was flipped in that episode for most of it, which is a cute touch.
Oh, in John Quixote?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even notice.
Yeah, exactly. It was very subtle. We also saw like John's mom And
Yeah, Reverend Miller.
Rev Miller, come on.
My favorite
And
character in
then
there.
DK, his best friend from the pilot, who you
Yeah,
may know
DK.
from HBO's Looking.
Oh shit, he is on Looking. You're right. Wow, I didn't even think about that. Holy crap. I like that show. People should watch Looking. It's like Girls if it was good. Girls is terrible. Lena Dunham is not a friend of the show.
Oh my god.
I'm just kidding. I used to like Girls a lot. I've since soured on it a lot. No, but yeah, I loved it. It was weird seeing DK because DK has been so far used in the show as just like, hey, remember the past? Because he's the only, him and John's dad are the only concrete evidence of Earth that we've actually seen so far.
What do you mean?
Everything else has been like in John's memory, but we've seen Earth in the pilot. And the only other people we saw in the pilot were John's dad and DK. Those are the only other people that we've seen in real present day actual Earth. Because we've seen like John's girlfriend and his mom and all of that stuff like in his head. So they're all memories of him, but we know that DK is real and strong and he's my friend. That's what I'm getting at. I'm trying to think what was the next. Oh yeah, there was also just the dimension real briefly where it's Claudia Black or it's Erin as Chiana.
Oh my god, that creeped me out so much.
I know.
It was so creepy.
Like,
That's the nightmare dimension.
Uncanny Valley, or?
Yeah. Because
Totally.
she nailed that performance.
The twitches and everything, like
But you look and it's like her face is not right.
She has a mole on the side of her cheek also, which I don't even think like Erin does. That stuff was really uncanny. And then also that dimension is just really sad because it's just John and Chiana, I guess. And she's like, yeah, every other wing is like on fire and destroyed. We're all gonna die.
So let's
It's
have
you and me.
sex.
Let's just do
Let's
it.
just have sex.
And then he's like, no, this is terrible. And then he gets out and then he's like, that wasn't real. You're making stuff up. And then he holds it in his hand. That was kind of corny. He's like, oh, Gianna's white hair. I don't know how I pulled out so much of her hair, but I did. He's like, it's real. It was all real. And then real briefly, another important thing we find out around that same time is that Einstein basically says, hey, it was us who opened the wormhole at the end of Daimyo Dichotomy.
Yeah, and took Moya.
Or not Daimyo Dichotomy. What episode am I thinking of?
Yeah, the
Dog with
other
two bones?
third season. Dog with two bones.
Dog with 2 months, yeah, who opened up that thing that put Moya. And when he pulled them through there, he got to have a little interview with Pilot and Naranti. And he was like, any of you folks know anything about wormholes? And they're like, I don't, but I have this friend. His name's John Crichton. He's lost.
He
but
loves that shit.
He's way into that stuff. You should hit him up sometime. And that's basically like the impetus for him finding John at this point, which is really funny.
Like,
Yep.
I feel at this point the show has definitely crossed the barrier to like continuity lockout. If you haven't seen the show prior to this, you would not understand one single happen, like between like that being resolved and then DK being seen for the first time since basically the pilot, and then Jewel and Stark, and we're in serious mode now, guys. It's the final season, and even though they didn't know at the time it was going to be the final season, they're upping the ante.
Yeah, it does have that very final feel to it.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, I don't know because I haven't seen the episodes past this, but I've got to imagine that there are episodes past this one that are more permissive to random viewers than this. Obviously, this seems like the pinnacle of you have to know things going into it, especially because there's so much archival footage from random episodes that's kind of spliced in for emotional effect.
Yeah.
That you have to have seen the pilot, obviously, to get what's going on there. You have to know the characters well enough to know that it's really weird when other people are playing those characters. You have to know like his fiance, his dad wasn't there. His fiance, DK, like you're saying.
The stuff from a Human Reaction is all in there.
Human Reaction, yeah, like those flashes of just images from past episodes. There isn't even like dialogue used a lot of the time. Unless it's key information.
Yeah.
There's
like
a
that
wonderful
moment,
screaming montage.
Yep. There's a lot of screaming. That's true. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. Before we move too far past the documentary footage, I just want to say that I thought it was a genius inclusion to this episode. I don't know how you guys felt about it, but props to David Kemper. I feel like they probably went up to David Kemper. Oh, no, he was running the show. But let's pretend somebody went up to him and was like, David, listen, we need an episode that explains wormholes. None of us want to do it. It's too hard. You do it. And so he just locked himself in a room for 6 hours and like drew charts.
Yeah.
And was
Red
like,
string.
and was like, guys, I know how the wormholes work in the show, and they all just gave him a thumbs up. Great, cool. We don't want to hear it.
Just film it. Filming starts tomorrow. Go.
Film it. He not only did that, but in this episode where it's like you gotta explain how wormholes work, you gotta set the stakes for the whole show, he did a comprehensive review and advancement of John Crichton's character through these interviews. And it was amazing.
Sorry, it's also one of the rare instances where they've been planning ahead. Because, sometimes I'd be commenting on Reddit and being like, oh, did you know that the eye patch was like, because Tammy actually injured herself and they had to write it in.
Yeah.
But no, with this, like they took Virginia, there's like, here's some lines, say them to the camera, and we'll use them in a later episode. So
they filmed so much of this like months in advance, and all of that stuff is like really, like they knew where they were going. They've had this plan for a while. And I know we're not wrapping up, but just like ultimately the thing that worked for me about this episode the most was that it is not that complicated. Like the stuff that that Einstein tells John, it literally is multiverse theory 101. It's basically like there's multiple universes. You are one of the few people who can jump between them.
Well, it's not entirely that.
Right. Well, the unrealized realities are different than multiverses. He does make that point.
Yeah.
But they specify that. Like they even say that, and it's kind of like it's like textbook though. It's just like, hey, here's how it works. Here's the exceptions to the rule, and here's how you need to, put your input into the world. Is you need to explore the different, like, what does he say? They say like some of them have various similarities, and you need to be able to jump between them, learn things from each one, and kind of like pick and choose and go between them.
Yeah, I think past David Kemper episodes have a tendency to be very complex in terms of their premise. I'm just thinking back to, I think David Kemper wrote the one where Moya split into various Moyas. Is that true?
I love that one. What is it called?
I don't remember. Color Vision.
I definitely don't know who wrote it. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Anyway, he wrote like Rhapsody in Blue and stuff though, like really complex.
Yeah.
Jargony episodes, and I think it's clear that he gets that this is a complex topic, or it's a topic that on its surface seems very intimidating.
Yeah.
The idea of there's wormholes and it's time space, it's huge, and it feels like we're inventing a totally new set of science, too much to understand. And so he not only uses the documentary sections to expand on John's character, but also uses them to weave through the jargon and highlight the pieces of information that are the most important for you to understand. Repeats them over and over and over again so that you totally get what's going on, because it's so key that you understand the gravity of the situation. And so he lays it out. It's like, okay, here's what you got to know. You never go back to a place before you left. Like by the end of this episode, you should be able to just have memorized the way that people are saying that, more or less.
Yeah.
If you do, then you need to do everything exactly as you did before, because then reality will reconstruct itself. And there's another example of it. I don't know if they actually planned this ahead, but they reincorporated this very well. The Harvey quote that they use. Oh, yeah. From that totally not important episode. Where
Different Destinations.
Yeah, where they go into the past and...
Cowboy episode.
Yeah, like Stark teleports him to the past or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But Harvey's whole quote about... what does he say? Let's see if I can find...
He says basically that whole thing. Well, we can find the exact line, but he says if you're going to go into something, you have to be able to follow the path, or else you're in that it'll fix itself.
Yeah, he says, if nudged closely enough to course, events have a way of restructuring themselves.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, this episode is like the chalkboard scene in Back to the Future 2, but on some kind of crazy drugs.
That's just Farscape in general, though.
Yep, you're right.
But on crazy drugs, yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot to take in, but it was very satisfying as someone who likes character-focused sci-fi. Like, because in addition to being like a mechanical heavy, like, hey, here's how all these wormholes work, it's also good character development for John and for everyone. And that's like the best thing about Farscape is that it can handle both of those instead of leaning too hard into one or the other. It's just like, it is just a pitch perfect Farscape kind of episode.
Also, you just have to consider the fact that, they're unrealized reality. They're not true, but they're still like relevant to the characters that we know. And it's like, how do they differ from the one that we know and love? And it's basically like that Dream Buffy episode where everything had a significance.
Which one?
Except the Cheeseman, the Sleepless, Dreamless, Restless.
The guy with the cheese. The guy with like the American cheese.
Oh!
Buffy cheese episode. I've been Googling stuff whenever we talk about it, and so far Google's been killing it. Because I looked up Moya splits into 3, and it was like, oh, you're talking about Through the Looking Glass. I'm like... It's Restless, by the way, is the episode you're thinking of.
Restless.
It is kind of like that, though. That's a good comparison.
Very true.
Because you could really, like, we could spend forever here going into every reality and thinking about, like, what it says about where John would fit into that one. Because the point that they make is, like, there aren't a million Johns, because that's sort of like the DC universe concept of multiverses is there's an infinite number of Supermans and an infinite number of worlds. Einstein basically says, no, there's one John who can, and there's like a million worlds that he goes between. So like there's one where he's a peacekeeper and they capture Sikozu and he tries to be nice. Like he tries to break out of the role and lets her out and then almost, he gets killed. Or there's one where he's with Aaron and they're in the room together and she snaps his neck. Like every time he tries to break out of the role that he's supposed to play, he gets killed. And then they're like, nope, you keep messing this up. You're not going to get it right if you keep trying to break the rules.
And I think what's really striking to me about this episode is that it functions as an argument for John as to why he needs to become a protagonist, because he's so invested, like in those first moments, in saying essentially, Frel this, like, I'm gonna keep making my silly references and you're not gonna do anything about it. And then we move through his mind and through his confidences and his insecurities to the point where he realizes, I really can mess this up. I'm not necessarily going to be amazing at this. I'm scared. Like, I'm afraid. That's huge.
It's the biggest thing of the episode. It's like the takeaway.
Incredibly huge moment that he's like, you know what? I'm actually really scared about destroying the universe. And then he has the culmination of that is this wonderful sequence where Einstein says, let's see. Okay, so I'm just going to read this out. So Einstein says, are you suddenly becoming afraid? John says, yes. Of the damage I can do, yes. Fear is the correct answer.
Yeah.
And then John says, can't do it. Einstein says, you'd rather die? Not particularly, but I liked my childhood and I don't want to scramble the eggs. Einstein says, should aggressive species puncture the wormhole, Should aggressive species puncture the wormhole, the consequences for both our realms would be unimaginable. John says, screw it. And then this line's fantastic. He says, but I'm not Kirk, Spock, Luke, Buck, Flash, or Arthur Frelling-Dent. I'm Dorothy Gale from Kansas, and you are going to hire more ancients. And
best line of the episode.
Amazing line.
The idea, and I'm curious, Hugo, what you thought about this whole thing of just like fear is the thing that should motivate you. Like you should be afraid, because if you weren't afraid, then you would abuse this. Of course you would.
Yeah.
Lots of people in the world won't abuse this.
There has to be a price to this kind of travel. Otherwise, you're just going to, like, why don't we go to an alternate reality and kill Hitler?
And it kind of like ties into John's whole arc, though, because he is the guy who's trying to figure out what's going on. Like he will always be a stranger in a strange land. The kind of like adage that we brought up over and over again in season 1. And if he wasn't, like if he adjusted too much, then he would get used to it and he would be like, oh, I know what to do. And he'd be too confident. So fear and that sort of like distance and unconfidence is like the most essential thing for him to use this power well.
But it's such a human quality too. So
yeah, he's naturally curious and he's naturally exploratory, but he's not competent in every way, which I love about it. And then I think we've pretty much covered all of the weird dimensions except for the one that we thought the whole episode was, because like honest to goodness, I thought that this episode was just going to be the like everyone plays someone else. That was it.
I thought that just knowing about it that was going to be a lot longer of a sequence.
Although like I do have a couple of points about it. One, everybody's great at acting as someone else. Like,
It's so fun.
I'm not the greatest Sikazu fan, but Riley Hill as Stark, give her an award, man.
Yeah, it's so good.
I got chills from the part where she asked. Well, first of all, she says like "my love, your love," which is amazing. It's like reusing a Stark line, but repurposing it to be also Sikoza related. And then when she asks John to kill her, and then just like straight up says some words that we don't need to talk about yet. But I looked at some trivia, and then I looked some things up, and I almost spoiled things for myself.
Oh, so yeah.
But everyone knows what we're talking about.
Except Magdalene.
Which part? What are you talking about?
When Sikozu is like, "Oh, kill me, shoot me, John," and then he's like debating it, and then she says like a certain pair of, or like says a word, and it's a name of something that's gonna come up later. And I was like, "Whoa!"
If I was able to whistle innocently, I'd be whistling right now.
We don't need to talk about it. It's gonna come up very soon. But point is, they're sowing the seeds of future stuff, even in the unrealized realities. Of where we're going to be going very soon.
There is one big missed opportunity, though, and that's because on the DVDs, there's this big interview with Virginia A. It's called Zan Forever, and she was saying that one of her big regrets is not going to David Kemper and being like, can we just say that Zan, for some reason, stops being blue, and like she has Sebastian ancestor, and she suddenly turns into a Sebastian. She's still Zan, she's just not blue. And so that was like her one regret, because she left her health reason, but she never asked like, can I play Zan as a human? And
in this episode, you mean?
No, like she meant in general, but the fact that they did not use her in this episode is kind of like, in my mind, a missed opportunity, because it would have been interesting to see her, like, have her play Heron, have her play whoever else was not around, and just like maybe bring her back that way. I feel like I would have liked it.
Right, because there's no footage ever of Virginia Hay with her hair now, because she has the bald cap when she's playing Zahn, and you know she doesn't ever get to like wear the the outfit that's gonna let her be Zahn and not hurt the hell out of her. But yeah, there's so many weird like swaps, because we got Aaron as Chiana, which we already discussed. Rigel as Dargo, which is a really weird touch.
Amazing. My favorite one.
Is it? Yeah.
There's a puppet, like there's a tongue to the puppet. The puppet uses the tongue.
Yep.
I'd like to think somebody just has that puppet at home, like the Rigel as Dargo puppet that they never used again.
Yeah.
And it's just like on their mantle.
They worked really hard on it. And then Sikozo Stark, who we talked about, that's awesome. Chiana as Naranti, which is a really weird one. She didn't have much to do. She kind of just like screamed.
They just dubbed Chiana's voice over Naranti, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a little weird.
Dargo as Jewel, which is cute. It's just, he like plays Jewel a little bit too up there, whereas I feel like Jewel was a little bit more subdued.
I feel like, okay, Jewel is a misunderstood character, and Tammy brings a vulnerability to the performance, and I think Anthony Simcoe just went too comedic with it. But it's funny for what it is. But you're kind of like, I'm not sure you're doing Jewel a service right now.
He's playing like a parody of Jewel, basically. And then Naranti as Rigel, which is just disgusting. But we don't need to talk about that one.
But I like that Melissa Jaffer was given an opportunity to have lines that are not like, here is some drugged food.
Yep. That's true. Next thing that I want to talk about is the kind of last switch that I was really delighted by, that I thought was a really smart move. And it ties into something that I appreciate about this episode. Another thing that I appreciate out of the long list, which is that it was attentive at the outset, right at the very beginning before we enter the alternate reality. It's attentive to the Aaron-John relationship, which is one of the most important relationships on the show. But in here, it's also attentive to the John-Scorpius relationship, which in many ways is an equally important relationship in terms of understanding John and understanding just kind of the message of this show. So we have that moment where he discovers, Harvey knew, which means Scorpius knew. Scorpius understands to some extent how this all works. So there's kind of a minor victory and still competition between John and Scorpius intellectually. And then we have the scene where John is on Earth and Scorpius plays his dad, but they've been like infused with Scaran DNA.
Nightmare fuel.
Very.
I thought that was an amazing scene.
Yeah, totally.
Because talk about Uncanny Valley. That was haunting.
And
Well, I didn't even realize it at first that it was supposed to be because
Right,
it's actually him.
That's what's beautiful about it, is that you don't realize it right away that it's Wayne Pigram playing his dad.
Yeah.
And then it creeps up on you as you're watching the scene.
Yeah.
And you realize, oh my God,
honestly, what gave it
insane.
away for me is that Kent Meckard is just not in the episode. Like, he doesn't have interview segments or anything. So I'm like,
Which was a bummer because I like him a lot. What's the gist of that scene though, right? Because they talk about like, oh, the Scarens captured us and all that stuff. That's one of the scenes I was a little bit confused by.
I think the idea was that the Scarens came and were like in control of Earth and had infused Earthlings with Scaran DNA or something.
Oh, in that reality?
In that reality,
okay.
I think that's what it was.
And John wasn't allowed to be an astronaut or something, and he was frustrated by that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah. I'm trying to look and see if there's... Yeah, and they're like grilling, hanging out. And Wayne Pigram does not have a perfect Southern accent, but what he arrives at is a very scary accent.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. Trying to figure out. Oh yeah, so he has this. You remember what we were like centuries before the Scarens conquered us? Weak genes, disease, death. I think our health and longevity outweigh some personal freedoms, don't you, son? So that's what's going on. What's going on there?
And
yeah,
I was gonna say that kind of echoes in the reality where Sikozu's a spy, a Scaran spy. She says that humans are a weak species.
Yep.
And
Weak
so-
species.
That just like echoed. True.
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, and that's a key inferiority complex that John has right now, is that humans are unsafe. I mean, that's right in the opening monologue over the opening credits, that he's really scared humans are going to get destroyed or killed by the things that he's learning and understanding. Just final line of that scene that's really great. The Scorpius dad says, "I know I'm not much of a hero to you, son, but if it means anything, I'd still like to walk on the..." I really like that line.
Yeah.
And then it ties right into the way that the ending is revealed to us, where he sees the moon first
And he
and then
smiles.
he sees Earth. It's like, oh my God, that was so cool.
I want to get there real briefly though. Just the last, there's like some cool stuff happening on the iceberg where Einstein and John are hanging out. Like they're all like, oh, this dimension can't hold for too long. Like we're time limited. That's just like tension of the episode, and then it breaks and all this stuff. And then and this is absolutely going to be the thumbnail of this episode of our podcast, is the shot of John being the only person left on that iceberg. And he's just like alone, like one person in the middle of like complete darkness, and there's like waves in the front. It's the most gorgeous shot this show has ever given us. I paused and like replayed it like 10 times. So it's like, I can't stop looking at how gorgeous this is. It's so cool. And it, it's one of those like symbolic shots where it's like, oh, John feels like he's alone on a raft in the middle of nowhere. And then right after that, he gets warped to the final shot of the episode, and he's like, whoa, cool, the moon, that's pretty neat.
But then,
Turns around, sees Earth.
then you realize Moya's not there and he's screwed.
Yeah, whoops.
Uh-oh. Well, because he says like Moya after home, like he says all the stuff he's supposed to say and think, and it's like this meditation moment where the guy's like, clear your mind, don't think about anything except the dimension you want to go to. That's how you do it.
There's no place like home. There's no place like home. There's no place like home.
Well, pretty much, yeah. If you just think hard enough, you're gonna get there, and then whoops, little off. A little bit off, but
So
maybe
that's
this is
the
home.
episode.
Yeah.
What did you guys think of it? Like, because I was very curious to hear your reaction to this, because it's a very atypical episode of Farscape.
I loved it. I was way into it, and I like that it played around with the characters and stuff. I didn't think it was slow or anything. I'm trying to think if I had like a significant, if there's anything I complain about.
I think what I loved about it is I loved it. I think what I loved about it is that it reorients us and refreshes us on everything that's essential about this show. It reminds us, like I was saying before, that this show is so much about the idea of where you are, where you're going, and what you know. And I really appreciated that. Some of the documentary parts at the beginning were about like, he frailed me real good, like he's great in bed. But then one of them was like a scientist who said Stephen Hawking is a genius, all right, but John is more toward that end of the spectrum than the rest of us. And then Einstein, the first thing he says when he meets him is, "You are quite a simple organism to possess the knowledge you do."
Yeah.
So yeah, I love the emphasis that Farscape puts on knowledge and on science, on understanding the universe, and on being responsible with how you're beginning to understand the universe. Because I think some science fiction shows, I think a lot of science fiction shows do that. Like that's kind of science fiction in a nutshell as a genre, is thinking about knowledge and how it affects humanity. But it's really, really cool that we're kind of touching base with that central pillar of what this show is about.
It's a fun one. It made me happy.
Yeah.
And we've been talking a lot in season 4 about like, are they going anywhere? Like this just seems kind of aimless. And it's like bullet speed, one direction. That's where we're going. To Earth, god damn it.
But I mean, I'll give you that the last few episodes have been like stalling and weird.
Garbage.
Like when people say that season 4 is the weakest season, I doubt that they mean the second half. It's
right.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I'm excited. John,
Mm-hmm.
well, actually, okay. First of all, Hugo, do you have any final thoughts on this episode? Like, when you first watched this, was it clear that like, oh, this is a huge turn? You said like this is a turning point, and all that stuff. But like, so were you binge watching the episodes at this point, or were you watching them live?
I was watching them like as they aired weekly.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
So that was like just an interesting episode, and going into it, I definitely wasn't expecting that kind of turn. I was also like, the little geek in me was very excited to have all the main characters back, because you had Stark, you had Jewel, you had everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like, I think this episode, you have to watch it and then you have to let it sink in, and it'll come to you that you just witnessed something more important than pee jokes and hands and vomit.
Yeah.
and bad cross-dressing. Speaking of letting it simmer, I knew they would do this. As soon as I thought about it, I was like, they probably did this. This episode aired in August. Kansas aired January of the next year.
Fun. Very fun.
Isn't that amazing? That's such an amazing cliffhanger to just hold people on.
Very fun. Oh my god.
That's like 5 months. 5 months of nothing. Oh, they play with our heart. I'm so glad we get to watch another one next week.
You know, I'm getting ahead of myself, but you'll be so glad that you're doing this weekly once we get to the end of season 4 into Peacekeeper Wars.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, they just like even more cliffhangers and stuff. But yeah, I think we should probably dip into the background info now.
Let's do it. All right. The iceberg was inspired by the cover of a New Scientist magazine read by David Kemper while flying from Los Angeles to Sydney.
I want to find that cover. Yeah.
Yeah. When Anthony Simcoe was asked which alternate character he would like to play, he chose Jewel so that he could have breasts.
In the classic Simcoe.
Footage from Premiere was used with Ben Browder's new lines being reshot for the sequence. The fight between Aaron and Crichton had to be reshot due to Rigel being in a number of the original scenes. That's actually really interesting to think about. I haven't seen Premiere in a long time.
Yeah.
Because Rigel is the only one who interacts in a new way, with significantly different way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Virginia Hayes' scenes were filmed when she visited the set during Don Quixote. Her makeup was modified in order to allow her to use a skull cap rather than shave her head. Cool. So stuff we... The documentary footage seen here inspired David Kemper to use the similar format for the episode A Constellation of Doubt, which is later on in the season.
17.
Spoilers. The costume department surprised Claudia Black by expecting her to fit into one of Gigi Edgley's Chiana costumes.
Love that.
Mm-hmm. Ben Browder sustained an injury to his hand during the sequence that Claudia Black leaped into his arms.
Love it.
Rayleigh Hill did most of her own stunts, but let her stunt double walk across the glass wall in the alternate reality.
You don't say.
I don't want to get knocked through glass. That doesn't sound like a fun scene.
Kemper's original plan was to show the documentary footage on the wall of the iceberg, but that was deemed to not be logistically feasible. I like the way that they did it in this.
I think the way that he wanted to do it is more of like what's the thing where the two people play chess? It's like the devil and the knight. Not the devil,
Seventh Seal.
Seventh Seal. It's more of that kind of thing where it's like smart guy talks to dumb guy and they just like watch life go by. I get what he's going for, but yeah, it's better to just show us the play the footage.
Yeah. During the alternate ship sequence in which the actors swap roles, Rayleigh Hill as Stark and Skozu, for example, notable omissions are Tammy McIntosh and Paul Goddard, even though their characters, Jewel and Stark, appear in hybrid form played by one of the other actors.
Oh.
Great final appearance by Lonnie Tubu's Crace, by the way, where he walks in and then he's like, "Oh, John, you did great. You killed everybody."
Yeah. You just wiped the party.
Yeah. This episode marks the final appearance, other than archive footage, of Virginia Hay as Zan and Lonnie Tupu's Crace. Furthermore, it marks the final appearance of Tammy McIntosh as Jewel on the series. An unusual omission from the interviews is Jack Crichton, although footage of Kent McCord appears in the flashbacks and flash forward.
Is Kent coming back?
Do you really want me to answer that?
No.
I mean, we're on the rim of Earth, so either he's dead
right.
or yes.
Yeah.
Wayne Pigram adds another character to his resume by playing an alternate reality version of Jack Crichton, who is Scarron. There's no indication that this is a manifestation of Harvey. Including flashbacks, Pigram has the unique distinction of appearing as 3 separate characters in one episode: Scorpius, Harvey, and Scarron Jack.
Scarron Jack.
Come on down to Scarron Jack's.
We got 2 for 1 buffalo wings with extra sauce. Yeah, I think that it was a really fun episode, and I'm hoping to see more exciting, weird nonsense from the rest of the show.
Yeah.
I think. Hold on. What is that? Oh God! Oh no! We're crashing. No, what is this? Hugo, where are we? What is this? What is this planet we found ourselves on, Hugo?
That's Planet Netflix, and you should let me off the ship so I can go watch it.
Take care of yourself. Wait, Magellan, we need you to read. What does it say on this little missive that we received from one of the cute little aliens on this planet?
Oh my goodness! Oh, thank you. It says that for next week we're watching 2 more episodes of Farscape. We're watching season 4, episode 12, Kansas. The crew travels through a wormhole to 1985 Earth. Well, thanks for telling us that.
Whoops.
Learning his dad will fly the doomed Challenger mission. Well, thanks for telling us that. Crichton tries to reverse the timeline.
Oh, Mike probably succeeds.
Jesus. And then season 4, episode 13, Terra Firma. The crew returns to Moya in orbit around Earth and find Earth dignitaries awaiting them. The aliens soon find life in the public eye difficult.
It's a human reaction. I'm just kidding. It's kind of, though. I will say, I feel like I read a little bit ahead of the Netflix summaries. We're starting to get into, like, the Netflix summaries are going to spoil stuff for us.
Yeah, which is annoying.
Yeah. Let's wrap it up and move into housekeeping. Clean that house. Shipkeeping. What do you want to call it? Hugo, where can people find you on the internet? Let's start with that.
Okay. Well, I'm on Reddit as LeoChris, as was previously mentioned. Otherwise, I'm on Tumblr. My personal Tumblr that I don't really use, but if you want to contact me, sure, I'll get it, is a BlakeJennerFan.tumblr.com because I am a fan of American actor Blake Jenner. And that's about it. I mean...
Great.
Blake Jenner's handsome. Isn't he dating Melissa Benoist?
Yes, he is.
Moisty? Ugh, he's handsome.
He's dating Supergirl, so what's
Yeah.
not to like?
Wow.
Yeah, Melissa. What's her? I can never pronounce her last name. I just call her Melissa Moist. It's like Benoist. Whatever. Thank you, Hugo. That was awesome. You can email ScapeChatz, scapechatz@gmail.com. Tweet at us at ScapeChatz. We're also on Tumblr, scapechatz.tumblr.com. And finally, I can be found on Twitter at Alan Ibrahim, spelled ALLENIBRAHIM. Magellan.
You can find me on Twitter at JustAFluke. That's JUSTAPFLUK.
Lovely.
I'm also on Twitter, but...
Oh, yeah. Plug it up.
I honestly don't remember what my Twitter is, but I follow ScapeChatz Twitter, and it's like my name, so you can
you'll find him.
I think your Twitter is at Blake Jenner is the best actor ever. I really, really love this guy so
69. No, yeah, we have like 20 followers. Just go through those and you'll find Hugo. It's worth your time. And having you on was worth our time. Thank you so much again, Hugo, for being on the episode. We had a lot of fun.
Thank you for having me.
And we'd love to have other guests on the show. Also, if you would like to be a guest on ScapeChatz and yell at us about why we don't understand the show, or be nice like the rest of our guests, send us an audio clip of your voice with your microphone that you would use to scapechatz@gmail.com. We'd like MP3s. Those are nice. And yeah, I think that's going to do it.
Yeah, well, I'll just say on the guest front.
We do have...
Pretty soon, it's going to be... Wait, hold on. Nope. I thought that there was a Farscape episode called Out of Time. There isn't. So it ruins my joke. But there is a Farscape episode called Losing Time. So let me just do the joke. Oh, it's not telling me what episode it was. Never mind. We're losing time.
It was like season 3, I think. We do the only other. We only have one guest confirmed from now on, or do we have 2?
I think just one.
Okay. So you only have one other guest lined up coming up in a few weeks.
Yeah, so we got some openings.
Yeah.
But we're losing time.
Yes, we're losing time. And
because the show's over soon.
Show's over. Yeah, we're running out of shows, so make sure you get your guest in now if you want to be on.
Either come on the show or make more episodes of Farscape for us to discuss.
Please. There are rumors that the movie is being worked on and like is very close to production.
That's fun.
That was the show, and we have been ScapeChatz, finding our way home. I'm not a rapper. Not at all a rapper.
Warm-ups 2016.
You ready?
Oh, I'm ready for the real rap.
Yeah. Okay, ready? 3, 2.
It's a Farscape rap. Here we go. Hold on, I missed it.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I kind of gave you a couple jump ins, and I was like,
Okay, I think I'm
all right, ready?
All right, Farscape rap. Here we go. Let me tell you about my favorite character. His name is Rigel. He's a puppet. You heard of her, heard of him, heard of this, heard of that, heard of what I'm talking about. It's a rap. It's not just a talk. It's also a rap. Now, Rigel was a Dominar. That's very true. He also worked at Domino's. That's not true. I'm telling you a couple facts to set the table, to tell you what you can hear if you're able. Your ears are working. That's a big part of what we're doing here. And now I gotta fart.
I was like, do I spit on my pop screen? That's what it's for. Or I can spit into my hand.
All right. We'll do one at the end.
We'll do it again. It'll happen. Make some magic happen.